A new superhero film! There's no time to waste. This looks like a job for Lex Luthor! Ah! No. I'm Superman. This is the Superman suit. Oh my god, Lex Luthor has stolen Superman's suit! I'm not Lex Luthor. Why do you think I'm Lex Luthor? Bald. What about that guy? That guy's bald. Nah, that's Barry. He's cool. What's going on, everybody? Barry! Oh, you're judging me by looking like a villain. That guy looks like the Penguin. Hey, I don't see the resemblance. Excellent. Only Lex Luthor would judge someone so harshly on their appearance. I just wanted to be Superman for a day. I'm not Lex Luthor. I really thought as a society we'd move past judging people on their appearances. I mean, the world's already so fractured. And it's only when we stop judging people based on their differences that we can start to heal those fractures to build a better tomorrow. And that tomorrow starts today. Hey everyone, sorry I'm late. Oh my god, Lex Luthor. Fine, you get what you want. I stand before you now as I am. Oh my god, it's Walter White! Ah!
Superman. We finally meet. Now, as planned, I'll destroy you. And of course, that reporter you always do interviews with.
Is it a bird? Is it a plane? No, it's a movie. We review movies here. Why would it be a bird or a plane? It's Superman. Faster than a speeding bullet, more powerful than a locomotive, and able to jump onto the big screen in a single bound. It's finally time for James Gunn's Superman, which arrives with massive burden of expectations from audiences wanting them to get the character right, and studios hoping this is going to be the start of a new franchise of its DC cinematic universe. But with the paint still pretty much wet from the last time we tried a DC universe, and audiences seemingly getting sick of some of these superhero films, the question becomes, is there room today for the Man of Tomorrow? There's been a pretty consistent debate, especially escalated after the release of Man of Steel, about whether or not Superman is even relevant or applicable to modern society or times anymore. If his optimism, his ideals and general worldview is opining for an America and a world that's long gone, and whether or not that view is outdated, old-fashioned or even naive. And it's a valid question. How do you bring a character that's been around for over 80 years from the past and bring them to the present? But a lot of people have also been clinging on to a very outdated version of Superman. There's many different versions of Superman. That's why the character has such longevity. So if we were to kind of boil it down to its essence, Superman is a character who might not always know what the right thing to do is, but will always try to do the right thing, and someone that we can look to as an example of who we could be at our best selves. But he's not the invincible blue Boy Scout everyone tries to paint him as, but that's what a lot of people's views are. So the question is, and the challenge to James Gunn was, can you bring a character that has been around for so long, and can you apply him to modern times, and can you make a character that feels heroic, hopeful, and someone that we can see is always at his core trying to do good? And if you ask me if whether or not he rose to that challenge, the answer is yes. So let's start with the Caped Crusader himself. David Corenswet steps into the tights this time, and I thought he was an excellent Superman. He brings a real humanity and compassion to the role, which perfectly suits the story they're telling, and he's a bit of a dork, which is quite endearing. He's also quite naive in that he always believes the best in people, and sometimes, you know, people be people and they're not at their best, and that means sometimes he's out of his depth because he's so trusting, and maybe that's something that will develop in future entries. I will say I would have liked to have more time in the film with him playing Clark Kent. It feels like we didn't get much of that here, and it was hard to discern how he would play the Clark Kent role, or even the distinction between that and Kal-El, or if there was much distinction at all between how he played that character. But I think regardless of anything else, as a film, I thought that the characterization and this version of Superman, I loved. I think they totally nailed the character. I thought Rachel Brosnahan made for a great Lois Lane and had really good chemistry with Corenswet. You really kind of believe their romance, even though it's kind of in its early days in this film. But I would have liked more of them together, if I'm totally honest. But again, there wasn't much time for that because the film is stuffed, and that includes being stuffed with characters. So I'm going to try run down a few here very quickly. Nicholas Hoult as Lex Luthor is as close as we've gotten to the comic book counterpart so far. He's this narcissist warped by fear and hatred, and really just a bit of a psychopath that can be quite petulant when things don't go his way. I loved every minute of it, and I can't wait to see where we see this character again somehow, somewhere. On the Daily Planet side, there's really only one character I'm going to talk about, that's Jimmy Olsen, played by Skylar Gisondo. I mean, they got me to care about Jimmy Olsen, which is quite an achievement. And I thought he was quite a funny version of the character, and he actually does have a place in the plot. So, yeah, I was actually happy enough with that character. Not sure I want to see that spin-off TV series we're talking about. But it does feel like he's the only one that's actually doing any work at the Daily Planet. But there are characters from the comics and from the many other versions of Superman packed in the offices, including Perry White and Cat Grant. They don't do anything, but, you know, they're fine window dressing. I mean, if you were going to fill the office with extras, it might as well be characters from the comics, right? We also have the poorly named, and boy did they know it, Justice Gang. People are going to love these guys, and speaking of guys, we have Nathan Fillion playing Guy Gardner, the Green Lantern that nobody likes, because he's a dick. And he's played to perfection, and he's really funny, and it's really good to have a version of Green Lantern on screen that's so entertaining. I mean, it's no surprise that this character works so well. Writing dicks from outer space that are funny is kind of James Gunn's whole thing. Then we have Isabel Merced, and she plays Hawkgirl, and she doesn't get a lot to do. She's often kind of the straight character to kind of silliness that's going on around her. But she does get at least one defining moment that was quite interesting, and I would like to add more of her, but what we got was relatively enjoyable. We also have another metahuman, and that is Metamorpho, played by Anthony Carrigan. And his powers are probably the most interesting in the whole film. And that means any action scene with him is naturally kind of imbued with some creativity. So it was cool to see him kind of use those different powers. And I'm honestly looking forward to seeing more of him. Now, you may notice I left out two superpowered people. Well, one superpowered person, one superpowered dog. And that's because they're the real scene stealers. Eddie Gathegi plays Mr. Terrific, but you might as well call him a thief because he steals every scene he's in. He's just cool from the way he's costumed to the way he acts. He has a dry charisma, and he's quite funny at times. And the action scenes with him in them are really different. It feels like something we haven't had in the past. And then we have a very good boy indeed, Crypto the Super Dog, who you're going to fall in love with. It's okay. It's just going to happen. And I've heard that adoptions are going up after seeing this, and I understand it because he's cute. But he's also a total nightmare, so I don't know what some people are thinking. But regardless, James Gunn has always done a great job of writing animal characters, and he's continued that trend here. As mentioned, the movie is absolutely jam-packed, and while I do feel like it held it together for the most part, it is relentless. There's a lot of concepts and ideas that are barely explained and are a little bit weird. And yeah, there's absolutely no hand-holding. So if you're a casual fan, you might feel a little bit lost. As someone who has at least some understanding of the DC Universe and Superman, I was fine with it. I found it all very entertaining. But since there's no hand-holding, it can kind of feel like sometimes the movie is running before it learned to walk. Or like you picked up a comic book in the middle of a run, and you don't really know what's going on. You're trying to fill in the gaps in your head. But if you're a purist, you could be annoyed at the fact that they don't show the origin story, but they do change the origin story enough that it might annoy you. I didn't have any problem with that personally because I feel like it emphasised Superman's human upbringing and the influence it had on him, and that suited the story they were telling. There are moments where you can catch your breath at least, because it does feel like the plot is a little bit stop-start at times. The plot in general is a little bit patchwork. The film is a little bit disjointed, it's a little bit of a mess, but I do think that overall it did work. I think the tones of the film sometimes feel a little bit conflicted, not in a major or damaging way, but at times it feels like things don't really mix all that well. There's a lot of real-world parallels, and that makes the kind of silliness of the source material. It just felt a bit odd. I thought it worked on the whole, but it definitely feels like the film is a little bit messy. There's plenty of action to be had in the film though, battles against CG monsters and cities and that kind of thing. I thought they were pretty entertaining overall. I thought they had a good mixture of Superman being vulnerable and also not overloading him with powers. Like sometimes he's got the most ridiculous powers in comics and other versions.
What was that?
Yeah, take that, you jerk.
That was a minor inconvenience.
Yeah, well, that's the idea. Slowed you down.
I'll say. Ow.
Didn't see that coming, did you?
No.
Yeah, well, take that.
Speaking of previous versions, I think some people might be feeling like Superman is a little bit nerfed, that he's a little bit weaker in this iteration than other Supermen. And maybe, but I feel like, again, I thought it suited the story they were telling. On the other hand, it did feel like Superman didn't often fight his battles alone. I would have liked to have seen a bit more of that from him, but overall I thought the action in the film was decent. So the action is enjoyable and entertaining enough, but there's no real peril to the whole thing. It's a real Saturday morning cartoon kind of vibe where, you know, punch, punch, see you next week, kids. Not really any danger to the whole thing. And then the last act is a big punch up through a city that's being destroyed. And it kind of felt like we got that earlier in the film, but it also feels like we just got that whole thing a million times already in our other superhero films. I mean, the only thing that's missing is a big sky laser. And, you know, there's a twist and a punch up between the good guy and the bad guy, and then it wraps up. And I thought the ending in general was just kind of a weaker point of the movie for me. Those endings are just starting to feel a little bit stale. It was fine, just not really inventive or interesting. It's totally serviceable, but I preferred what preceded it. I generally like the costumes in the film, yes, red underwear included, and the film is bright and colourful in a way that suits the tone of its story. The soundtrack has moments where it elevates the story as well, even though it does really lean heavily on the John Williams score, which is so good it's hardly worth complaining about. But James Gunn does steer away from the needle drops that is used in some of his other work. One of my big concerns going into the film was that it would feel a little bit hamstrung by being this first film in a universe, and that it would be trying to connect all these things and expanding stories in all sorts of crazy directions. And honestly, it does feel like the film does stand on its own two legs, even though it feels like you might have missed the moment where it got up on those two legs and you've only noticed it now that it's running a full sprint. Overall, Superman is a lot of fun, and it feels like a version of the character we haven't seen on the big screen before, that does a fantastic job setting the table for a new cinematic universe. It's got some decent action, some solid emotional beats, and a lot of cool characters, new and old. And while it's certainly stuffed enough that it feels a little bit messy, it mostly hits the right notes. I think the biggest takeaway should be here that they nailed the character of Superman and made a great sandbox for him to play in the future. While it might not be the perfect first flight, it certainly soars high enough that you'll believe a man can fly.